Hello, I'm Max. Welcome to the demonstration and tutorial video for GraphCam. Let's create a new project and a new scene and begin by importing the GraphCam template package, Unity package. The quickest way to get started is to view the content of the example scenes and copy the pre-configured prefabs into a new scene. However, I'm just going to start with the perspective scene. Let's wait for the shaders to compile. In the meantime, let's take a look at line pools. We can configure the default amount in the stack and the maximum amount in the heap. All right. The first time we press play, we should get a prompt to download the TextMesh Pro Essentials. Let's exit out of play mode. Import these. Let's begin by exploring the perspective camera. But note, there are no significant differences between the perspective camera and the orthographic camera. Okay, so we have a graph rendered in the scene. That means GraphCam is working, and now let's learn how to use it. Okay, so first I want to show you the three planes that GraphCam renders the lines to. Using the can draw gizmos option, you can see the front plane, and if you rotate the camera 90 degrees to the left and move back to the left plane and rotate down and move up a little, see the ground plane. These lines show the density and the gizmos help with the configuring of the graph. Another thing, these Z value, Y value, X value, these determine where the plane should be. So for the front plane, as you can see by default, it's on 0, where Z is 0. And we can move that by coming here. Where is it? Where's the value again? Aha, there it is. We can move what the Z value should be, where on the Z value the graph should be drawn. And this is important for scaling the graph, adjusting how it scales, because the scaling is done by the distance the camera is away from the graph. As you can see, the lines, they spread out. Okay, so notice that the scale in the GraphCam. Let's enter play mode first. So on the left in the scene view, I'm going to move the GraphCam, and notice how the scaling changes on the right in the game. As I move out, the scale increases, and as I close in towards the graph, it decreases. In the inspector, see it's like 169. Let's change that to 0 and click update graph. So it came back down to 0. And at 0, this is what it looks like. Move closer. It scales in, move out, scales out, and this is all customizable. It can be set, which I'm going to show you in a moment. And so one feature I want to show the scaling is that this control is dynamic spacing. If you turn it off, the lines, they scale by distance and not by multiple. And I'm going to show you how to set like custom scaling in a moment. First, let's cover some more features. Let's turn it on. Then is dynamic but inconsistent with. What this uses is the ratio values. It uses the min width ratio and the max width ratio. So the spacing distance, there's a line at the initial space distance of 100. There's a line drawn at every 2 units, and this basically determines that the width of the line is based like as you zoom out. As you zoom out, the width of the line increases to stay consistent. When this is off, or when this is on, it increases, and the moment it increases to the point where the scale width has reached the maximum ratio of the spacing, the spacing amount changes so that it becomes smaller again. And once it reaches the minimum ratio, it increases. So let's see these settings right here. These determine how it will scale, and I don't really recommend this, but this is another way to customize GraphCam's scaling. This is different from the initial scaling. Let's see. Dynamic but inconsistent with. So so in this right here, you wouldn't have seen much of a difference, but this is another way of scaling, and it's different. It's a different way of scaling. Yeah, you will notice that this activate this fake graph thing. It's oh, it was actually a bit forward because this wasn't reset. So let's change that to 0. And okay, so there we go. So yeah, this value right here, the z value. First off, you can set the sorting layer so that the graph is rendered behind objects. But you can also use this to move the. Oops, sorry. Hold on. Something weird's going on there. You can also use this value to move the graph behind. Whoa. Actually, that moved it in front, so let's move it behind. You can use this to move it behind the graph. All right. Which, when you can see better with the gizmos. Oops. See where the graph is, and it's being drawn behind. Okay. So one thing to mention is that before I continue further, GraphCam is a bit CPU heavy, and the reason is one of the likely reasons is that the numbers for the lines are being drawn in their own world canvas, and with many of these, it's likely to lag and crash. So that's one of the possible reasons why GraphCam lags. But like, I'm moving the camera pretty fast here, and it's completely fine. It's updating each time I move this. But as we like look at the ground plane, there might be some lagging issues. Yeah, there are some lagging issues here, and I'm just going to exit out and come back because we don't want to be stuck too long, right? So let's stop. Okay, we're back. The editor did crash last time, so I opened the project up again. Actually, I decided to scratch that project and create a new project because last time I was recording, I didn't show some importing as the package was being imported because it only recorded the editor window. So take the assets and just drop it in the assets. Everything, you're right, gotta import everything. And yeah, so this is gonna be really quick. Actually, GraphCam doesn't take long to import. Cool. So here's the maximum folder. GraphCam, 2 words. I don't know why. Should be 1 word. Might fix that. Example scenes. So we're in the perspective example scene. There's another one. GraphCam URP. But we just need to see these 4. We're just going to see these 4s. So we're going to go through this one again, compiling the shader, and we're going to hit play. It's going to ask to import the essential TMP package from Unity. So import these. There's an error here, cannot import while it's in play, so exit play. Click this, very quick, takes 2 seconds, and now we move on to the next part. So we've got the GraphCam here, and let's clear these because that was bothering me. Okay, so we got GraphCam here. Can draw gizmos, see the line density. I've got to turn that off though. And the next thing I want to show is that yes, you can pan out, but then you can also translate parallel to the graph. So for the front plane, it's for the X on the x-axis. If you move, you will see the graph moving, and you'll notice how the lines, they stick to the edge, the range lines, and that's cool because that looks nicer than them not sticking to the edge. But you can turn that off. You can set that to turn off. Going here, and there should be a can't show range on edge. Just turn this control off, and now it won't stick to the edge. Only the numbers, because there are lines here, and that could probably be customized in the future update. But for now, we're just going to leave it. So can't show range on edge. can show arrows on range. So if you notice something, there are these arrows for the lines, and I've turned those off now, so they're no longer shown. But like, can show arrows, and I'm not sure if you can see them though. But if you come here, range width multiplier. This is a really odd number. It's really small, but this is how to change the width of the lines, and they're different lines. So there are orthographic lines. There's a range line. There's a black line, which is just a line, and then there's a gray line. Orthographic when we're using the orthographic camera line length. So these would be the same for the orthographic. Right now, let's look at the range width. So this is an odd number, 0.0055. Let's change this to 9, so that increases it. Click, so the graph will update the moment I move. And there you go. It got thicker, and now you can see the arrows a little bit better. And these arrows, so these are customizable. Like if you go to the prefabs, here's the arrow prefab, and there's a script on these arrows. Let's see. There's an arrow script on these prefabs. Okay. Hold on. Here, and so when you're changing out your arrow, you will have to tinker with these values: the scale, X, Y, Z, and the directional offset. And when you tinker with these, you'll be able to adjust the arrow exactly where you want it to be on the line and to the scale. So this arrow image is being adjusted. And another thing I want to show as in this is that as you move the camera, move this camera. Let's get this really, really close. Whoa, whoa, whoa. See that these gizmos, I don't really like how they appear. But you know, let's not play with this too much. Okay, so there's one thing I want to show, that these arrows, well, the arrows are turned off, but the lines, they rotate to look at the camera. As you can see, there's a little bit of rotation applied here. And if you go back here, and this is something, because these are not the line renderer. This is actually different. This is a line that was programming. It was programmatically generated by the mesh, and the source is available, so you can see how it was done. So you will notice that the line right here, it rotates, and unfortunately there are these gizmos here, which there's a way to turn these off, right? Oh, because I don't like the gizmos here. So I know there's a way to turn them off, and debug gizmos. But anyway, we're seeing all these gizmos. It doesn't matter. You guys can see this line, and let's go back to GraphCam. Let's turn on the arrows. Oh, the arrow isn't showing because we're all the way onto the right side. There isn't really a need to see an arrow. On this edge, but now there are arrows, and then when you go off, there's the need, there's the arrow there, and there's the arrow there, but you will see the arrow. And these arrows, they rotate to position themselves to look at the camera, which I was just stating. these gizmos, they're really kind of bothersome. So you will notice that the arrow on the line have rotated. Look up. And yes, this line is being like going off screen. This is going off screen. Well, the camera is actually behind. Oh, you know what? There's been an error. So I need to restart. So this way it wasn't showing up, but that's okay. That's okay. Uh, it's probably something occurred where it was being pushed. I usually don't encounter weird errors, so this thing works. But every now and then, there's like some kind of weird glitch. This should work. It shouldn't break your project. So here you see the arrows. Let's move this up a little bit. No. So okay. So here's you'll see that arrows they're rotated along with the lines to look at the camera. It gives a nice smooth look uh, in GraphCam. Okay, so that's something I want to show. And I already showed that you can translate across and go to infinity, and the range line will stick to the edge. All right, so one more thing I want to show before we get into like customizing the scale is that these lines here, obviously, these these are customizable. If you come here, you can change the colors, which will set the color of the material right directly here. And this is for ease of use because you don't want to go into the material and you want to change everything. You can do it right here. It's not necessary to do it from these, but you can do it. And so the material you're going to need is going to need to have a color property. There's one thing I want to mention though is that the material for the lines and for the arrows is different. For the lines, it has GPU instancing enabled, but for the arrow, uh, the lines there's no GPU. So if you're going to make your own materials, you're gonna have to make sure for the arrows it's off, for the lines it's on. Okay, so what's next? Okay, so we can. I want to show you that you can adjust the width of the lines. You can adjust the length of the lines, and so right here, the lines width. Yeah, these are weird numbers. They're very small. Let's make these like slightly bigger, like 3 times bigger. That's okay. Let's go with 6 right here. Update graph. We saw those get thicker. Saw the lines get thicker. All right. I don't really like this look, so let's go to Control Z. And let's click Update Graph. There we go. Line length. So that should be obvious to you what that does. Let me just show it. Line length multiplier. So this one here, you will see that it updates automatically. This is because the lines are drawn through GPU. And because of that, there's no need to click update. But if you were not using GPU jobs, it won't update. So you would have to use the update graph manually. However, like there's no reason not to use these two options here. And so one more thing is that as you move the camera around, you'll see that the lines they stick to the edge, but they're kind of off the camera, like outside of the camera's view. They're also going. and that's just part of GraphCam, because the lines, as you get close to the center, they cover the whole thing, but as you go out, they're halfway across, because that's how you should be seeing that, right? If they were smaller, it would look weird. So um, that's no issue at all. Just like increase these, increase the length a little bit more, and now there's a full graph here. There's no problem with the lines. Well, there's actually a little bit right here, and okay, so here, increase these a little bit more. Yep, there we go. So the range line, this line here, uh, that really can't be set, because there's no really point of it. You want the range to be all the way across, right? But again, the source is available, so you can go in and change that out. Right, back to the we're back to the original GraphCam. Okay. All right. So now, did I show you the rotation of the? Yes, I did, and the graph is, and the game crashed. So we're not gonna look at that. So the next thing I want to tell you is that, right. So we've got the front plane, we've got the left plane, we've got the right plane. Let's exit out of that again. This again, and I'm going to show you this in Gizmos, because it doesn't crash in Gizmos. That's how I know that the crashing is, because it's something to do with Unity, and Unity has something like probably the world canvas, and maybe something with the lines. The lines do have to be removed. There's some scripts running, but to figure out where they're going to be, it's not a lot of work for the computer. So we've got the three planes: the front plane, the left plane, the ground plane. We've got the numbers. So what about the behind plane, the right plane, and the back plane, right? Well, you can just go across, and turn around and view the front plane from behind. Well, actually, because the rotations are weird, I'm going to rotate 180, right? Just 180. And this is going to be 0 and 0. So what happens is that the numbers, they flip. So that's another feature of GraphCam. Now we're behind the graph, and the numbers, they're flipped. This side is positive, and that side is negative. And that's the this fake data thing. So that's not the lines. That's not the lines. So now the numbers, they're flipped, and that's great, because you want to go behind and you want to see from the other side, right? Okay, and the directional light can be that we can see it from this side, and yes, it works. The material is facing us on this side. The arrows are facing us. Uh, so as I was developing this, it actually wasn't reflecting, so I had to figure out how to do that. That's another feature. Okay, so that's one of the last things I wanted to show you here before we move on to scaling the graph a custom way. Okay, so now what we saw was that for the default, we started the graph at the initial distance of 100 from the plane. This is a positive number, 0 to 100, 0 to whatever. It's a positive number. The initial distance is used to calculate the scale. And every time the initial distance multiplication delta for resetting grid basically means that every time it's a multiple of the initial distance by 2, so 100, 200, 400, or it's a fraction, 50, 25, 12.5, 6.125. Wait, is that right? Yeah, I think so. Uh, um, then, uh, then, yeah, I should be okay with like simple math, right? I made this thing. So that's how this GraphCam scales. Every time the distance doubles, it changes the scale. So that's basing an initial distance. What this means here is how far the lines are drawn apart. So at 2, there's going to be a line at 0, which is world center, and then there's going to be a line at 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. And then the black line every x interval. The black line, this is the main line that we saw. There were the gray lines, the black lines. Um, so at the x interval, that's the fifth interval. So as it goes from 0 to, so 0 is a range line, and in a future update, I might offset the range, and there's gonna be a little bit of work. I have an idea on how to do it, but for now, the world center is 0. Anyway, the first line, which is going to be a gray line, is going to be a 2, that's going to be a 4, that's going to be a 6, 8, and then finally the fifth interval is going to be a black line, which is going to be a 10. And round the digits, and then, so you know what this means. If they're digits, they're rounded to 1 decimal point. And this shouldn't be set higher than 6 or higher than 5, because there's some kind of problem when there are too many digits that follow a number, especially in WebGL, it seems to crash a little bit. It doesn't represent it correctly, and it sometimes just doesn't work in WebGL or other platforms. And honestly, there's no need for more than like 1 or 2 or 3 digits rounding. And then finally, there's a fake scale representation ratio. So I'll explain what this is. So say if you're going down to a very small scale, but we want to enlarge things. So we have a bug and we want to enlarge it 10 times larger. So the scale, it should also be adjusted, right? So if the bug is 10 times larger, the scale needs to be made bigger, or it needs to be made smaller. So it probably needs to be like smaller, right? Because then 10 would now be 1, because it multiplies 10 by this number. So, or if you wanna enlarge something, say it's 1, but we want to show it as bigger, we can change the ratio. Let's just go in play mode and let's see that. Spectre. So let's see. Right now we have 20, 40, 60. And if we do this let's make it by 2. Let's click update graph. We got 40, 80, 120, even though it's not the same scale thing. But let's just change this back 1. And then round digits. Want to round, the way I can show this is like is dynamic spacing off, because this will now show the digits. And turning this off is actually CPU heavy, because every time it pulls in a new line and it adjusts the number. This is actually CPU heavy. It doesn't look like it here. There are not too many lines there. So, but this is a lot heavier than turning this on. So there's a warning that if you turn it off, it's a little bit more CPU heavy. Anyway, now you can see that the digits have a point here. So the rounding, the round digits, let's round it to 3, okay? And here Now we can see that there are two digits here. This probably means there's like a zero. It's been rounded to 3. We increase this 4. Yeah, I don't know why it's not showing more than 2, even though there's rounded to 4, rounded 5. And this is likely because somewhere during development, I switched off more than 2 by programmatically. It's probably what happened, and I'm likely not going to change that too soon because I wonder if there's like a bug. There probably isn't, but all you have to do is search around digits and like, oh, he's programmatically capping it off at 2 digits. But this can be set, and I will try to fix this. Okay, so that just shows how many round digits, and you can turn that off. No longer rounds digits. All right, that's right. So that's something. Okay. Finally, the thing that's probably most important to people is showing them how to set the scale. So customizing the scale. So right now, what we saw was we saw that the lines, they are, there's 10, 20, 30, 40, and as you zoom out, it doubles 20, 40. So why is it like this? So as I explained, the initial distance at 100, where the graph was, we're close to around 100. Um, then the distance when it changes is a multiple of 2 or a factor of 2. Um, and then the spacing at the initial is 2 per line. And then there's a black line every fifth interval. So the 5 times 2, that would be 10. So the black lines, they show the numbers, right? And if you want the numbers to the gray lines, which I don't recommend on, there's the option, can it show a gray line number? And like, okay, it's gonna use more computational power. And honestly, it's not showing the numbers because probably something I programmatically turned off during debug sometime because these were these are probably taking up to. Oh, actually, no. You know what? It probably does show. It does show. But they're extremely small. They're extremely small because each of these lines are so close um, that you can't see the numbers. So this is why you have to keep it turned off. Uh, and then there's the gray lines color. So there's the black lines, which these are the black lines, and then there's the gray line color. And then should override gray line color. You know, what does should override gray line color do? So if I turn it off, or if I set it to false, I think it just takes the color of the black lines. I'm pretty sure this is what it does. Yeah, as you can see, all these lines are pretty much the same color. Um, Most likely, this doesn't set take effect until a new game is started. Like exit play mode, it probably sets this on a bake. Um, that's okay, we'll look into that. But should override gray line color. This isn't a big deal. Okay, so we know that the lines they are at 10. So what if now I wanted to start the initial at 5, right? What if I want 5? So every 5. So if I wanted the black line at 5, and then every time I zoom back, I want the multiple to be 3. I want it to increase by, so it will go to 15 next. So at first the graph is going to be 0, 5, 10, 15. And as I pan back the camera, it's going to be 15, 30, 45. How do I do this? Okay, so as we can see, the initial interval at distance is 2, and then backline every 5th. That would mean the backline is going to be on the 10th. Let's set this to 1. The backline is going to be every 5th. That would mean every 5th line is going to be black line. And let's also adjust this for a second. Let's make this like half. This we don't have to, but we can. And we move this up. Spectre. Okay. So let's do some simple math here. Backline every 5th. And then the multiplication distance is going to be 3. So now what we should expect to see is 0, 5, 15, and hold on, 0, 5, 10, 15, and it will increase to 15 as we pan back, 15, 15, 30, and 45, right? Okay. Zero, 5, 10. Correct. Switch to free 19, 16, 19, see a little bit more of the width. Um, updates on movement. If you go back, keep going back, keep going back, keep going back, you have to increase by 3 times. And finally it updates. 0, 15, 30, 45. So this is what we wanted. Right, very easy to do. And so, yeah, GraphCam also works for orthographic. In the example scenes, I have an orthographic camera scene. Really, the only difference is that we click GraphCam, we change the projection from perspective to orthographic. And now it will zoom. It will zoom, you know, it will zoom when you move back, when you pan the camera back. And, but it's different because this thing the fake visual is going to look the same. So let's move the orthographic camera, which this isn't perspective, it's orthographic now. This is the orthographic camera. Whoa, let's not crash this thing. Okay, this is our orthographic camera. And it looks a bit weird. It looks like there are lines missing. They're not really missing. It just looks weird. Um, you know, the lines, they're all there. Nothing's really missing. Yeah, all the lines are, I think it just looks weird. Like it looks like the lines are missing. Like 2 lines here, it's like 2 lines here, and one line like 40, around 40. But they're not missing. It just looks weird. And it's probably due to the width of the lines. The orthographic lines, they have a different width. The orthographic line width, orthographic gray line width, orthographic range width. These are different. The perspective camera and the orthographic camera has different settings. So it's just like let's go into the orthographic scene. And pretty much the only difference between the perspective and the orthographic is this, the projection size. So, and zooming back is it's a bit different because this graph here, it doesn't shrink. It stays as consistent size. Okay. So I don't recommend using the orthographic camera. I didn't do much work on this. I don't know if it works perfectly. It should work fine, but you can use this. Just zoom back. Okay, so that's the orthographic camera. Not much to see here. I've covered most of the main stuff. So next, the render texture, right? So you can cast GraphCam onto a render texture, obviously, by the name of this scene. In the game, there's a render texture here. There's a main camera here, and GraphCam is being projected onto a render texture, and the main camera does not see any of the graph because it's on a different layer. Then we can move GraphCam back, and we can move this camera back. Whoa, well, that's too fast. That's okay. And then we can spin it. So this is like it's great for like a billboard that you have. This is not what I want to spin. This is what I want to spin. Cool. So this is great for a billboard somewhere in your game. And then the same render texture can be used inside the UI, the canvas. So come here in the canvas, and you know, one of the main reasons I was making this, I was thinking of doing data visual stuff. We need a graph. I also wanted to do like math stuff, and I was like, we need a graph for that. And I just fell out of the idea. I don't want to do it, but I made this thing really quickly. Um, so you've got this, and we've got this stuff in the UI, which is probably where people are gonna want their graphs, right? Is there anything else I wanted to cover? Uh, oh, I want to tell you that the best way to learn GraphCam, right, is through the editor. Editor, just go to GraphCam here. Uh, go to which layer renders to, sorting priority, and just about everything you want to do can be done straight from this editor panel. It can also be set with the iGraphCam script. So the component get GraphCam as iGraphCam get component, and it will. There's the website has a documentation, and it pretty much has all these things that are in Graph Controller script just moved out to the iGraphCam, which makes it easier to access everything from one place. Okay, so that should be all, and this project will probably get a few more updates every now and then. There probably going to be stuff missing that in this demo that's not there. Oh, one more thing I want to show. Here's the WebGL demo on this website. Hexafon HIO GraphGL non-playable demo. This shows GraphCam in WebGL. So GraphCam is CPU heavy and it does crash. But what's happening here is I have an animation on the camera and I'm moving it around in the world space, and it's updating fluidly. It's updating fine. There's a UFO in the scene, and the UFO emits has an emission of lights. So, which is why the graph like shimmers, when the UFO comes in front, and you'll see the shadow of the UFO on top of the graph. You don't see it here, but probably see it in other previews. So it works in WebGL. It should work. I mean, there might be problems, but at this configuration, it works fine. So that's the last thing I want to show. Okay, that should be that should be it. Actually, there's just one last thing I forgot. I didn't show what this stick lines to interval, how this behaves. So when it's checked on, the lines are from world, right? Based on spacing, which is 2, so it starts with 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, so forth. When this is turned off, it starts on the left edge of the screen, camera's left edge, where it crosses the plane, the front plane. So where the Z value is 0, right? That's where we had the Z value. So the front plane, which uses the Z value, where it's 0, it starts here. And so let's go into play mode to see what that would look like, right? It won't stick to interval, and it's going to squish with the range line, and maybe that's a feature some people prefer. So it's there. During development, first I had to do it this way, and then I had to use the stick to intervals feature. So, but some people want the line starting at the edge. So that's good. It's actually, it will look a lot better if its dynamic spacing is turned off. So now we see that these lines, right? So it starts from the edge, right, and it kind of goes, and that's why there's a digit here. So. So like before they were sticking to the interval, but now they move up smooth and fluidly. Or they don't stick, but they stick to the screen. So that's something I wanted to show. That's the last feature. All right, so there might be other stuff, but we're gonna call it quits here. And yep, that's it.